Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our. Good morning, everyone. It's not starting. Is it going? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday morning Parsha class. This week is the portion of Chaye Sarah, which is talks about the aftermath of the death of Sarah. Sarah dies in Chevron, and Avram goes, as the Torah tells us, to buy a burial plot for his wife, to bury her. A couple of questions before we even go into the Parsha. First of all, the name of the Parsha begs the question. The name of the Parsha is Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah. And really, the whole entire Parsha talks about her death and after her death. So why would you call this Parsha Chaye Sarah? Okay, that's a question. That's an important question. Let's talk about the Parsha itself. What is in there? So the first thing the Torah tells us about this Parsha is that she lived 127 years, and then she passed away, and Avram went to speak to the people of Chet, who were in Chevron, the people in charge. They were the residents there, and he asked them if they can help him get him a burial plot for his wife and for the future. And they say, of course, you can bury her wherever you want. No one's going to hold you back. And he says, I have my eyes on a certain cave, and I would like, if you can, arrange for me a meeting with Ephron, the Hittite, who is the owner of the Machpelah cave. And Ephron they make a meeting with him, and Avram offers to buy that plot. And he says, you don't have to buy it, I'm giving it to you. Avram says, no, I don't want to I don't want you to give it to me, I want to buy it. And he buys it for a hefty price. He ends up, Ephron, what he said at first, he sounded very generous, and he's going to give, and he's going to, no problem, large. And at the end, he charges Avram top dollar for this. Top shekel. And Avram is happy to pay it, because he wants to be sealed, done, his. As Rashi tells us that after he buys it, Rashi uses the words, the Torah uses the word Vayokum, stay Ephron, the field of Ephron rose to become Avram's. So Rashi tells us that when it says the field of Ephron rose, it means Tekuma Haitalo. Tekuma Haitalo, which means it had an elevation, a status of elevation. It went from the hand of a simple, from Ephron, which is a hedyot, which is a regular commoner, to the hands of a king, Avram. So this field was elevated, not just that it was purchased by Avram, which can happen by anyone. I can buy something from you, it goes from your possession to mine. That's every sale is like that. But over here, it wasn't just a regular sale from person to person. It was a sale from one level to a new level, which is royalty, so to say, to Avram. In other words, the field became something of a different nature. It had an elevated status. He buries Sarah. It's all good. And he realizes that his son is now not married, Yitzchak. And it says that Avram was getting old. And it's the first time, by the way, in the Torah that it says about someone that he's got old. Even though Adam was 930 years, it doesn't say that he was old. Noach, these people lived very long. Avram at this point was not that old. He was much younger than them. He was maybe 100, he died at 175 years old, so he was getting close to that number. And the Torah refers to him as getting old. And our sages tell us that the reason that over here he points out that Avram got old is because Avram was indeed the first person to age. His body became old. Till then, people didn't age. And there was Avram that turned to God and said, Nathan, there's something wrong with this picture. Your father walks with the son in the road, and you don't know who's the father, who's the son, because they both look alike. And him and Yitzchak looked alike. It says that they had a very similar, face. And he said it's unbecoming of people that they see us both, and we both look the same age. No, people didn't age, so if they look alike, you don't know who's who. So he asked Hashem that people should age. Therefore, it says the first one it says about Avram, that he aged was by Avram, because he was indeed the first one to age. He got old, white hair, the way old people age. Anyway, he's now looking for a shidduch for his son. And there's a whole fantastic story that transpires in this shidduch search. He calls his loyal servant Eliezer, and he tells him that he should promise him, take an oath that he's going to search for a shidduch for his son from the family, from Avram's family. And he takes the oath, and Eliezer goes, and he does, where am I going to go find the shidduch? It's like a drop a dime, who am I getting, And it's not like there was no communication, so you had to, see, it says that he went on the way, he stopped at a well, and he's made a, kind of like a sign with God. And he told God, I don't know how to look for shidduch for my master's son, but I need your help. What was the sign that he made? He said, I'm going to go to the well, and the girls that come out, to people that come out to draw water from the well for their flock and this and that, if the girl that comes over and offers me water, and then offers my camels water as well, and does this with an open heart, I will then know that this is the girl. As he's speaking, the Torah tells us, just as he's finishing up this thing, this girl, Rivka, comes out with her pitcher on her shoulder, coming to draw water. And she sees him, so she runs over to him. She sees him with 10 camels. Can I offer you some water? And can I offer you the camel's water? And there was a whole, exactly as he had said, and he's like shocked. He can't believe that this is happening so quick. But he still doesn't know if she's the designated one, because Avram had said she has to be a family member. So he doesn't know who she is. So he starts talking to her.
Did her age matter at all or not?
She was young. She was very young at the time. Yeah.
She was how old?
She was 3 years old at the time.
How could she give water for 10 camels and a guy?
Yeah, she was a big girl.
Very capable. Big girl. Just kidding. Very special.
She was a big 3-year-old.
Why does she looked at least 7, because generally there's nothing in here that doesn't have a meaning. Why is she 3 years old? I mean, how does that happen?
What do you mean, why is she 3 years old?
Why could not have Shem said made the girl 12 years old? Why does she have to be 3 years old?
Not sure what the question is. That's how old she was. I mean, what?
Okay, all right.
Why wasn't she 12? I mean, in other words, you asked him, why didn't Hashem wait till Yisro was 10 years old and do this whole thing?
Or choose another woman who wasn't 3. They did wait later.
Anyway, so she does this, and he asks her out, "What's your family? Who you are?" And she turns out she's from the family, and he was so thrilled. He went to the house to meet the parents, and it's a long story. And eventually, she comes with him and goes to marry Yitzchak, and she marries Yitzchak. Yitzchak is a lot older than her, obviously. He's 37 years older than her. Yitzchak was 37 at the time, was 40 at the time. And because you'll remember that Yitzchak was 37 when the Akedah happened, when the sacrifice. And then that's when Rivka was born. The next thing it says that Rivka was born. And he waited 3 years, and then he was able to marry her. But of course, he didn't live with her as husband and wife in the full sense until she was older. She had her first child when she was 23. Yitzchak was born, Yaakov and Esav were born when she was 23 and Yitzchak was 60. Anyway, so he brings her back to the tent of to Yitzchak, and Yitzchak moves into the tent where Sarah had lived. And that's when he found great comfort. Yitzchak found comfort in his wife after Sarah had died. And Rashi tells us something fascinating, that it says that he brought her into the tent and it was Sarah. Sarah's tent. The Torah means that it was Sarah's tent, but the wording that the Torah uses are a little vague. It makes it sound like, hey, that he brought her into the tent, it was Sarah. What does it mean it was Sarah? So Rashi tells us, the Medrash tells us, Rashi quotes it, that when Sarah was alive, she would light Shabbos candles. And the Shabbos candles would not go out till the next Friday afternoon. It lit. And she would relight it again. So there was a constant light in the tent. That when Sarah died, the light went out. That was it. The miracle didn't happen anymore. And then another miracle with the dough that she would bake, it would be fantastic. It would be very healthy, and it would always, you ate a little, it was enough to satiate you for a long time. And there was a cloud over the tent. Now that all went away when Sarah died. Rivka was brought into the tent as all these things returned. That's why he found tremendous comfort. And that's also why the Torah says that he brought her into the tent, Sarah. In other words, it was like she brought Sarah back. That's why the Torah uses that language. After that, the Torah tells us about the death of Abraham. Abraham dies. And here for the first time does the Torah tell us that Ishmael and Yitzchak, or rather Yitzchak and Ishmael buried Avram. And the Torah says that Ishmael put Yitzchak ahead of him, even though he was 13 years old, 14 years older than him. He put him ahead of him, and that's what Rashi tells us. From where we see that Ishmael repented, he did tshuva. Because till then, if you remember in yesterday's story, he was bothering Yitzchak. He was arguing with him. I'm the older one. I'm the real heir, and so on. And that's why he was kicked out of the house. He was removed. But then he came back and he did tshuva. And he placed Yitzchak ahead of him. Now, that's pretty much, that's the story of this week's parsha. It ends off with one last detail, that Avram got married again to Keturah. And Keturah, some say, was the same. It was Hagar. He brought her back and remarried her, and he had a bunch of kids with her again, 6 more kids. So this was a fantastic end to the story of Avram. Now, then he dies, and that's the conclusion of the story. I asked you in the beginning, how is it that that this parsha is called Chaye Sarah, when indeed it's not the life of Sarah, it's actually the death of Sarah. The whole story is about her death and what happens after her death. And that remarries, that's not exactly the life of Sarah when he goes and when someone dies, you remarry to another woman. That's like, he moved on, so to say, away from Sarah. How is that considered the life of Sarah? It's the death of Sarah.
So maybe it's the influence of the life of Sarah.
So here's the answer. You have to analyze the life of Sarah. What is the life of Sarah?
3 stages.
The life of Sarah, what 3 stages? Which 3 stages?
The first pasuk, it says how many years.
Oh, that. But you hit on something. I wouldn't say it's the 3 stages of 7, 20, and 27, 100. But it's interesting that you mentioned that because there are indeed 3 themes in this week's portion. There are 3 themes in this week's portion: the burial of Sarah in Hebron, the marriage of Yitzchak to Rivka, and the remarriage of Avram to Keturah, and the death of Avram and Yitzchak and Yishmael burying him, which Yitzchak is placed before Yishmael. Now, when you analyze Sarah's life, what was her life all about? Yeah, but what do we find in the Torah about Sarah? The big story we find about her is that what?
Getting pregnant.
Beside that the big controversy is yesterday's parsha. She gets very upset with what's happening in the home, and she removes Hagar and Yishmael from the house. She tells Avram, she can't stay here. Avram is told by God to listen to Sarah, and he removes her. Now, why did she remove Sarah? Hagar. Why did Hagar want to remove Sarah? So when you read the text itself, it's a little misleading. Sounds like there was some kind of an argument about the inheritance and of the money, and right? That's what it sounds like. That she says to Avram, this woman her child is not going to inherit the money, your inheritance, together with my son Yitzchak. It almost sounds like a story of jealousy, right? You read it yesterday? Yeah. But the commentary gives us the rest of the picture. What was Sarah fighting for throughout her life? Number one, that Yitzchak is the real son of Avram, not Yishmael. Number one. Correct? And that, in other words, the promise that God made to Abraham. What was the promise that God made to Abraham? When you look back in the first covenant that Hashem made with him, he makes to him a couple of promises. He makes a promise that he's going to give him the land of Israel. He makes a promise that his son will become a great nation, etc. Right? Those are the things that he tells him. And the battle ensued between Hagar and Sarah. Hagar felt that she's the first wife, and she got pregnant from Avram right away. There was no challenges, and Yishmael was born with the blessing of the angel, as we learned a couple of weeks ago. And she therefore thought that quite naturally, the promise is through Yishmael, and it made sense. Thinking about, when you look at Rashi tells us that at some point she really believed in Sarah. She thought that she was a righteous woman. But when she didn't have children and she got pregnant immediately, she said, wait a minute, maybe there's something that I don't know. There's something, maybe she's not that religious or so righteous after all. If she doesn't get the blessing from God and I got it so quick, maybe she's not as what I think. Maybe I'm the main wife. Maybe my son, this is really the the story of Avram and the progeny of Avram, and the promise of Avram, and the Jewish people are going to come through Avram, that promised nation, so to say, that blessed nation. When Sarah hears that, she says, no, you can't stay here. She can't stay here anymore. Because she knew that that's not the case. She knew that the promise is through Yitzchak. In fact, yesterday we read where God tells him that it's through Yitzchak that you will, that your seed is going to be named Yitzchak. In other words, he's the one that will carry the flag of Avram's promise. So this is the battle that's going on with Sarah in her life. She's trying to protect that first promise that God made to Avram, that it should be in the right, it should be understood correctly, and it should be, the whole world should know where it is. Now, when you think about it, during her lifetime, she didn't really accomplish she didn't seal the deal, so to say, because there was confusion. Yes, she had to kick Yishmael out of the house, and eventually Yishmael comes back, as we learned. When they go to the Akedah, he's there. So
Yishmael doesn't exactly, that's not exemplary like here.
He actually does tshuva, and he comes back, and true, he comes back. But here's the key: when you look at the three themes of the parsha that I just enumerated to you, which is the burial of Sarah in the cave of Machpelah, the burial plot in Chevron. Let's take that for a minute. What happens over here? It says in the sages tell us that there are three plots of Israel that no one can ever complain against the Jewish people that it's not theirs. The rest of Israel, the nations of the world continuously claim that we stole it. And it's not yours, and you're not right, and you don't belong there, and you're not sure that they still don't know if Israel has a right to exist. The only nation in the world that has to fight for its right to exist is Israel. You ever heard anyone say about Russia that they have a right to exist? No one ever talks that way. The Swedish, they ever heard in Sweden that if they have a right to exist? Yeah, they have a right to exist. They ever hear that debate? Is anyone debating, does Sweden have the right to exist? And they come to the conclusion that yes, Sweden has a right to exist. Only Israel. Even though they end off, and the conclusion is that we have a right to exist, the very discussion about it is offensive. Do you have a right to exist? Yeah, you do. Could you imagine having that conversation? Does Jeff have a right to exist? And everyone comes to the conclusion, we thought about it and you do. What an offensive conversation. What an offensive conversation that is. Isn't that offensive? What do you mean, do I have a right to exist? Why is there a question about that? Thank you very much for your conclusion. How do you even have such a chutzpah to have such a conversation? In the world, no one has a conversation about any other nation. Do they have a right to exist? Does Madagascar have a right to exist? No one talks about it. Switzerland has a right to exist. They don't. They do. Maybe. I'm not sure. Okay, yeah. We don't have that conversation. But with Israel, that statement that Israel has a right to exist, it's a conversation in the UN or wherever. It's a chutzpah when you think about it. We all get excited when the President of the United States comes out and says, Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel has a right to exist. They have a right to be. They have a right. Well, get out of here. You have a right to be. I need you to tell me that I have a right to be. It's such an offensive conversation. And yet all Jews are so excited that the President of the United States told us that we have the right to exist. They don't realize how offensive it is. So that's true with regard to the whole Israel. Till today, we're still fighting, do we have the right to Israel or not? But the sages tell there are three plots in Israel, three locations in Israel that there's no doubt about. There's no debate about it. They can't even claim anything but that Israel is the rightful owner. There's no discussion about it. Which are the three? Chevron, this plot, the cave of Machpelah. The second one is Jerusalem. And the third one, Jerusalem meaning the place where the Beis Hamikdash is built. And the third one is the place where Yosef is buried, in Shechem. Why these three? Because these three were paid with top dollar. We paid literally top dollar for it. There was a contract of sale. There's no debating it. Avram insisted to pay full price. When Ephron offered him a free lunch, he didn't want it. And when Ephron therefore said, you know what, you want to pay for it? Yeah, 400 shekel kesef, Eivel Asechi, common currency, right, the best currency. He said a lot, didn't do anything, right? He was going to give it for free, ended up charging him top dollar, right? He didn't go on Zillow and see what is it worth. He just threw out a price, and Avram said, thank you very much, I want to pay it. You know why? Because he wanted to know questions later. And it says regarding Shechem, the same thing. That when Yaakov bought Shechem, he bought Vayikim Chelkas Asada. He bought that place where Yosef is buried. And the same thing in Jerusalem. It says that King David bought it from Aravna, the Jebusite. He bought the plot. He didn't take it by force, by fight, by army, conquest. He didn't do any of that. He did the whole Israel, but not this. This he bought. Now, in discussing this and understanding this, we see why Sarah finally accomplished one of her main goals. What was her main goal? That Israel belongs to the Jewish people, to her children, to her and her children. Not to Hagar, but to Sarah and her children, Yitzchak and On. Where was that first accomplished? After she died. A piece of Israel became Jewish. A piece of Israel became actually under the ownership of Avram and Sarah, not Hagar. The second thing was she prayed and fought for the perpetuation of the Jewish story through Yitzchak. The marriage of Yitzchak is finally gives the ability for that dream to happen. Because Yitzchak will go on to have children because he got married. So the first Jewish family, her son Yitzchak, is being established right here in this parsha. The thing that she fought for, to the point of Mesiras Nefesh, she gave up everything to make sure that Yitzchak is the son of Avram and he is the one that's going to carry on the Jewish family. Finally happens in this parsha. He gets married and is going on to have children. Establishes the first Jewish family, and Avram's line now is destined to go through her beloved son Yitzchak, the one she fought for so much. And what happens at the end of the parsha? When Avram dies, Yishmael puts Yitzchak ahead of him in the burial. Yitzchak carried the coffin, and then following Yitzchak was Yishmael. He was secondary. Isn't that a full circle? Isn't that a beautiful ending to the story of Sarah? So what she's fighting for throughout her life, when does it all come to happen in practical terms, physically, here on earth, T-O-T as they say, in this parsha, after she dies. All three things she fought for throughout her life happen now. The Israel starts belonging to the Jewish people. Yitzchak establishes the family of Avram, gets married, and is now going to be the progenitor of the Jewish people going forward, according to her desire and what she hoped for. And Yishmael is now recognizing Yitzchak's supremacy. I don't want to use the word supremacy, but Yitzchak's superiority. I don't know what word you want to use, but the fact that he is ahead of him. Preeminence. Good. So when does Sarah start living? When is the life of Sarah really starting to become blossoming? In this parsha, after she dies. It's not a question after she died. It's in this parsha. the three themes of this parsha are all what is everything about what Sarah lived for. It's all about the life of Sarah. That's why this parsha is called Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah, because the life of Sarah is expressed in this parsha more than any other parsha. What she lived for happens finally. Someone has a life's project. Doesn't make a difference if they're here to watch it or not. When it happens, that's when you know that person is alive. That life is now real. And the life of Sarah becomes real in this week's parsha. Because the three things she fought for most, the three things she lived for, and the three things she died for, were that first covenant that God makes with Avraham. But for 30 years or 50 years, whatever it took, it didn't happen all in 1 minute. But this parsha is finally where it starts happening for real. And she fought for it. Israel belongs to the Jewish people. Yitzchak is the progenitor of, starting to be the progenitor of the Jewish people. That promised Abraham of the great nation that will come through. Who is it coming through? Finally, it's coming through Yitzchak, not Yishmael. And Yitzchak is now recognized even by others, by Yishmael himself, as the person who is meant to be Avram's main son. He puts Yitzchak ahead of him. So everything she fought for and lived for finally came to fruition in this parsha. And therefore there's no more fitting name for this parsha than Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah, even though she's already passed. No problem. I have a class now that's starting in a few minutes, so I'm going to now... No.
Can I help you?
Have a wonderful week, everyone. And I want to bless everyone that's listening, you too, that we should all merit that what we live for should happen during our lifetimes. And if it doesn't happen during our lifetimes, everything, it should happen eventually like it happened for Sarah. But that's really what life, that's when you start living. When your life's dreams and your life's battles for what you really lived for happens. That's life. You're here to see it or you're not here to see it, that's your life. Have a wonderful week, everyone.